When billionaire CEO Daniel Okoye knelt on the Italian marble of his own Lekki mansion, begging a barefoot maid not to leave, everyone watching thought he had finally lost his mind. His mother clutched her pulse. The security guards looked away, their faces masks of confusion. But only Grace knew why. Only she knew the cost of that moment. Only she understood the weeks of suffering that led to this impossible scene. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to where it all began. Lagos never sleeps, and in Daniel Okoye's Lekki Phase 1 mansion, it didn't dare. The estate was a fortress of silence, broken only by the hum of 24-hour generators and the polite purr of luxury vehicles gliding through electronically controlled gates. High, white walls with electric fencing blocked out the noise of the city beyond, the honking danfos, the street hawkers, the real Lagos that pulsed with life and chaos just meters away. Security cameras, like digital eyes, watched every trimmed flower, every manicured hedge, every movement within the compound. Inside, the air conditioning was always a crisp 18 degrees, a sterile bubble against the humid Lagos heat that pressed against the windows like an unwelcome visitor. It was here that Grace arrived on a humid Tuesday morning, carrying everything she owned in a worn duffel bag held together with a safety pin. She was 23 years old, from a small village in Anambra where everyone knew everyone's business, where market days were events, and where the only mansion anyone had ever seen was the one the senator built before he stopped visiting entirely. She had come to Lagos not for the glittering lights of Victoria Island that she'd seen in Nollywood movies, not for the promise of fame or fortune, but for something much simpler and infinitely more desperate. Survival. Her younger sister, Nneka, was dying. The doctors at the state hospital had been clear, brutally so. Her kidneys were failing. Only a transplant could save her. A transplant that cost millions of naira that their family would never see in 3 lifetimes of famine. Grace, with her cracked phone screen and worn-out slippers, was invisible against the mansion's grandeur. She stood at the servants' entrance that first day, her bag at her feet, and wondered how she had ended up here, in this gleaming prison of wealth. Then there was Cynthia. Cynthia was Daniel's fiancée, though Grace wouldn't learn this until later. A fashion influencer with 2 million Instagram followers, she lived a life documented by her new iPhone 17 Pro Max, every moment filtered, captioned, and monetized. She was all high-end designer bags with names Grace couldn't pronounce, sharp-edged perfume that announced her presence 3 rooms away, and a smile that never, ever reached her eyes. The first time she saw Grace, she stopped mid-stride in the hallway, her heels clicking to a halt on the marble. She looked Grace up and down with the clinical assessment of someone examining a questionable piece of furniture. And immediately, without a word being spoken, she saw a problem. She saw a threat. She saw someone who needed to be crushed before they got comfortable. The class divide wasn't just a gap. It was a chasm, a canyon, an unbridgeable void. It was Grace's worn-out bag, held together with a pin, against Cynthia's brand-new Hermes Birkin that cost more than Grace's entire village made in a year. It was Grace's quiet yes, more against Cynthia's loud, dismissive laugh that echoed through hallways. It was Grace's calloused hands against Cynthia's manicured nails. It was everything Grace was against everything Cynthia pretended to be. The first day, Grace was cleaning the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Lekki Link Bridge. It was her 3rd hour of work, and her arms were already aching. The cleaning solution smelled chemical and sharp. She could see the bridge below, cars moving like ants, people living their lives, going somewhere, being someone. She wondered if any of them were as trapped as she felt. Cynthia walked in, sipping a green smoothie through a reusable metal straw. She looked at Grace, then at her own reflection in the glass, checking her edges, her makeup, her perfection. So, you're the new help, Cynthia said, her voice dripping with boredom, each word carefully weighted to remind Grace of exactly where she stood in the hierarchy of this household. Grace turned, startled. She hadn't heard anyone come in. Yes, Ma. My name is Grace, Ma. Grace. Cynthia tasted the name like she was tasting something bitter. How quaint. Try not to break anything, including the air. She laughed at her own joke, a sound like ice cubes in an empty glass. As Cynthia walked away, her perfume lingering like a threat, Grace's phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands. A text from her aunt back home. Necker's hospital bill is overdue. They will stop her treatment tomorrow if we don't pay. Grace, what are we going to do? I've begged everyone. Nobody has money. Please. She's asking for you. Grace looked at the skyscraper mansion she was standing in, at the marble floors that probably cost more than the hospital bill, at the chandelier overhead that sparkled with what must have been 1,000 crystals. Then she looked at the text message again. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. She blinked them back quickly. Mrs. Ade, the head housekeeper, had warned her on day one, no crying. Madam doesn't like emotions. Keep your troubles at home. But home was the trouble. And the storm hadn't just arrived. It had been raging for months. Grace was just now realizing she was standing in the eye of it, and the worst was yet to come. She put her phone away and went back to cleaning windows, each swipe of the cloth a prayer, each streak removed a tiny act of hope. The first real humiliation was a private one, which somehow made it worse. There were no witnesses to validate the cruelty, no one to confirm it had happened at all. It happened in the sterile, white laundry room 3 days later. The room was bigger than Grace's entire family home, with 3 industrial washing machines, 2 dryers, and an ironing station that looked like something from a sci-fi movie. She was carefully ironing one of Daniel's expensive shirts, the steam hissing in the quiet. The fabric was so smooth, so perfect. She'd never touched anything like it before. The iron glided across it like water, and she was terrified of leaving a single mark. The only witness was Mrs. Ade, who was busy counting bed linens in the corner, her lips moving silently as she checked items off on her clipboard. Cynthia swept in without knocking, her heels clicking on the tile like a countdown. She was holding a small pile of her own clothes. Delicate, expensive lace lingerie in shades of blush and cream. Pieces that Grace knew, even without looking at tags, cost more than her monthly salary. She didn't just hand them to Grace. That would have been too kind, too human. She threw them. The lace landed on the floor at Grace's feet, a humiliating pile of intimacy and power. Wash these, Cynthia commanded, her voice flat, bored, as if she were asking for a glass of water. By hand. With the special silk soap. The one in the cabinet. Grace flinched, looking at the clothes on the floor. Something in her wanted to refuse, to say this wasn't in her job description, that she was hired to clean rooms, not handle another woman's underwear. But the text message from her aunt was burned into her mind. Necker's treatment. The deadline. The money. Madam. I was ironing. Did you hear me? Cynthia snapped, and suddenly all the boredom was gone, replaced by something sharp and dangerous. And if you ruin them, if even one thread is pulled, I will deduct the cost from your salary. Do you know how much this is worth? She picked up one piece from the floor with 2 fingers, holding it up like evidence. More than you make in a year. Maybe 2 years. So be very, very careful. Grace's throat tightened. She swallowed the shame, pushed it down into her stomach where it settled like a stone. She swallowed her words, her dignity, her anger. Yes, madam. She bent down to pick up the lingerie, her knees cracking as she knelt. Her hands, used to farm work and hard scrubbing, used to helping her mother wash clothes in the stream back home, trembled as she touched the delicate fabric. It felt like spiderwebs, like it would dissolve under her rough fingers. Mrs. Ade sighed, her back still turned. She pretended not to see. Pretending was safer. Pretending kept your job. Just do it, child, she muttered, just loud enough for Grace to hear but quiet enough that Cynthia couldn't accuse her of sympathy. Don't make trouble. Grace's eyes burned. She refused to let the tears fall. Not here. Not in front of them. She looked at the pile of clothes. Each piece was a small humiliation. Each piece was for Necker. For the treatment. For the chance. She filled a small bowl with cold water, added a few drops of the special soap that smelled like lavender and money. For the next hour, Grace knelt on the cold tile floor, her knees aching, her hands raw from the soap, washing another woman's unmentionables. Scrubbing them gently, carefully, terrified of pulling a thread, of giving Cynthia a reason. Cynthia, meanwhile, was on the balcony just outside the laundry room. Grace could hear her. She was taking a selfie, adjusting her angle, pouting at the camera. Click. 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 She heard Cynthia's voice, bright and fake. Just living my best life, you guys. So blessed. A pause. Hard life. Nail polish laughter. Grace squeezed the water from a piece of lace and watched it drip back into the bowl. The water was cold. Her hands were cold. Everything was cold except the burning shame in her chest. A week later, the humiliation moved to the kitchen, and this time there were witnesses. This time, the other staff members would see. This time, Grace would understand that her suffering was meant to be public, meant to be a lesson to anyone who thought they could be comfortable in this house. It was 3 p.m. on a sweltering afternoon. Grace hadn't eaten all day. Breakfast had been skipped because Cynthia had sent her on an early morning errand to 3 different stores to find a specific brand of organic almond milk. Lunch had been interrupted twice, first to refold all the towels in the guest bathroom because they looked messy, and then to polish the railings on the main staircase because Cynthia was expecting Instagram-worthy photos for a sponsored post. The staff dining area was just a small table in the corner of the massive kitchen, near the back door. It wasn't fancy. Plastic chairs, a simple table, but it was theirs. It was the one place the staff could sit for 20 minutes and just breathe. The cook, a kind woman named Momangozi, had saved Grace a plate. Jollof rice and chicken, still warm, covered with another plate to keep it fresh. The smell alone made Grace's stomach clench with hunger. The other maids, Esther and Busy, were already eating, talking quietly about their own families, their own struggles. Uche, the driver, was sitting at the far end of the table, quietly sipping from a bottle of water, his face unreadable as always. He was always watching, always listening, but he never said much. Grace sat down. She murmured a quick prayer under her breath, her mother's voice in her head reminding her to always thank God, even for small mercies. She picked up her spoon, the metal one from sitting near the stove. She was about to take her first bite, the rice almost touching her lips, when the voice cut through the peaceful moment like a machete. What do you think you are doing? Every head turned. The kitchen went silent except for the hum of the industrial refrigerator. Cynthia was standing in the doorway, dressed for an outing in a pristine white jumpsuit and gold accessories. Her arms were crossed. Her expression was one of theatrical shock, like she'd just discovered a crime in progress. Grace's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. A single grain of rice fell back onto the plate. Madam, I was just eating. Eating. Cynthia laughed, that same cold sound. She walked into the kitchen, her heels clicking, each step deliberate. Eating. Really? I called you 5 minutes ago. 5. I need you to polish my shoes. Are you deaf? Or just lazy? I didn't hear the bell, Ma. I'm sorry. I'll come now. Grace started to stand, still holding the plate. No. Finish your food. Since it's so important. Cynthia walked closer, looking at Grace's plate with disgust, her nose wrinkling like she smelled something rotten. And you are eating the jollof rice? The one for the main house. The good one. Cook. Cook gave it to me, Ma, Grace whispered. She looked at Mama Ngozi, who was suddenly very interested in stirring a pot on the stove, her back turned, her shoulders tense. I don't care who gave it to you, Cynthia said, her voice dropping lower, more dangerous. From now on, you eat leftovers. After everyone has finished. If there are any. She looked around the table at the other staff members, making sure they all heard. Making sure they all understood the new hierarchy. Is that clear? Esther and Busy stared at their plates. Uche's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Yes, Ma, Grace whispered. I didn't hear you. Yes, Ma. Grace said louder, her voice cracking. Good. Cynthia pointed at the plate in Grace's hands. Now, throw that away. All of it. And go to my closet. My Louboutins won't polish themselves. They're the red bottoms, in case you don't know what those are. Grace stood up slowly. Her legs felt weak. Her stomach let out a loud, painful grumble in the silent kitchen, a betrayal of her body's desperation. Someone, maybe Busy, let out a small sound of sympathy. Cynthia smiled, a cruel twist of her lips. Oh, hungry. Should have thought about that before you ignored me. Go. Now. Grace walked to the bin, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped the plate. She held it over the trash and used her spoon to scrape the hot, delicious food into the garbage. The rice that Mama Ngozi had saved for her. The chicken that someone else could have eaten. All of it, wasted. The smell of pepper and thyme rose from the bin, mocking her. Her hunger was a physical pain now, a cramping in her stomach that made her eyes water. But her shame was worse. It was a weight on her chest that made it hard to breathe. Cynthia watched the entire thing, her arms still crossed, her face satisfied. Don't let it happen again, she said. Then she turned and walked out, her perfume trailing behind her like poison. The kitchen remained silent for a long moment after she left. Finally, Mama Ngozi turned around, her eyes wet. Grace, I can make you. No, Grace said quickly, her voice barely audible. No, Mama. Thank you. I don't want trouble for you too. She walked out of the kitchen, past the table where her coworkers sat frozen, past Uche who was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. She walked to Cynthia's massive closet, found the red-bottomed Louboutins, and began to polish them with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Her stomach growled again. The smell of food from the kitchen found her even here. She bit her lip and kept polishing. Each stroke of the cloth was a reminder. This was the price. This was what it cost to save a sister. But how much more could she pay before there was nothing left of her? The next humiliation was public in a way that made all the others pale in comparison. This one happened where people could see. Where neighbors could witness. Where Grace's dignity would be stripped away in broad daylight. It was a hot, dusty Tuesday afternoon 2 weeks into her employment. The sun was merciless, the kind of Lagos heat that made the air shimmer and turned car roofs into stovetops. Grace had used her small 30-minute break to walk to the local pharmacy just outside the estate. She needed paracetamol for a blinding headache that had been building all morning, pressure behind her eyes that made even the bright sunlight painful. The walk to the pharmacy and back took 25 minutes. She'd hurried, almost jogging, her uniform sticking to her back with sweat, her old slippers kicking up dust from the unpaved sections of road. She'd spent her own money, 200 naira that she probably should have saved, but the headache was making it impossible to walk. If she couldn't walk, she'd be fired. If she was fired, Neka would die. So she bought the pills. As she returned, the sun beating down on her, she walked up to the massive estate gate. The main gate. The one used by all residents, with its electronic sensor and intercom system. She'd used this gate every day for 2 weeks. The security guard on duty, Ademu, knew her. He was a middle-aged man from the north with kind eyes and a family of his own. He was about to press the button to buzz her in when a sharp voice cut through the afternoon heat. Hold on. A white G-Wagon, immaculate and gleaming, was gliding to a halt behind Grace. The tinted window purred down with an expensive whisper. Cynthia was in the driver's seat, her sunglasses covering half her face, but her voice was unmistakable. Sharp. Cold. Deadly. Ademu. What are you doing? Ademu straightened up, suddenly nervous. Good afternoon, madam. I'm just letting Grace in. Why? The single word hung in the air like a threat. Grace froze on the other side of the gate. Her headache intensified. She could feel eyes on her. Another resident's car, a black Lexus SUV, was waiting right behind Cynthia's G-Wagon. The occupants were watching. A woman walking her dog on the sidewalk had stopped to look. A gateman from the neighboring property had paused his sweeping. More. Ademu looked confused. Cynthia let out a sigh of pure exasperation, the kind reserved for people dealing with unimaginable stupidity. She turned to the other guard on duty, Femi, a younger man who was always eager to please. Femi, come here. Why are you people letting that village thing in through the main gate? Grace felt her face burn. Not from the sun. From humiliation. The woman with the dog was definitely listening now. She's bringing dust and poverty into the estate, Cynthia announced, her voice loud enough to carry. Loud enough to make sure everyone heard. Look at her. Sweating. Disgusting. Do you know how much we pay in service charges to keep this place clean? And you're letting that walk through our gate. She pointed a long, manicured finger at Grace, who stood frozen on the other side of the bars. From now on, she uses the back gate. The one for the trash collectors and the lawnmowers. The service entrance. Do you understand? Grace wasn't trash. She wanted to scream it. She wanted to shout that she had a degree, that she was educated, that she was only here because life had pushed her here, because her sister was dying, because poverty wasn't a choice. But the words stuck in her throat. Her voice had abandoned her. Madam, please, Ademu started, his voice careful, apologetic. The back part is all mud from yesterday's rain. She'll ruin her slippers. Do you want your job? Cynthia snapped, and Ademu fell silent immediately. The threat was clear. Everyone's job was on the line. Everyone could be replaced. Cynthia turned to Femi. Femi. Show her where the back gate is. Now. And if I ever see her at this gate again, at my gate, you are both fired. Both of you. Do you understand? Yes, Ma, Femi said quickly, his head bowed. The window purred back up, sealing Cynthia back into her air-conditioned bubble. The G-Wagon drove through the gate, which opened smoothly for her. The driver of the Lexus behind her, an older man in a polo shirt, shook his head slightly. Grace saw it. But he also drove through. He didn't stop. He didn't help. Nobody helped. Nobody ever helped. Femi walked over to Grace, his eyes full of pity but his voice resigned. Sorry, Grace. Madam's orders. He pointed down a narrow, unpaved alleyway between two mansions. It was shaded and dark, lined with overflowing garbage bins and stagnant water. It's down there. The service gate is at the end. Grace looked at the alleyway, then back at the main gate where she'd walked through just this morning. She wanted to cry. She wanted to quit. She wanted to tell them all what they could do with their mansion and their rules and their cruelty. But Neka's face appeared in her mind. Her little sister. 13 years old. Dying. She walked away from the main gate, her head down, while the woman with the dog pretended to suddenly be very interested in her phone. Grace walked down the muddy path, her slippers squelching in the dirty water. The alleyway smelled like rot and neglect. Mosquitoes swarmed. By the time she got to the service gate at the back of the mansion, her old slippers, the ones her aunt had given her before she left the village, were completely ruined, caked in mud and garbage water. Her headache was now a raging migraine, pounding behind her eyes in rhythm with her heartbeat. She still clutched the small plastic bag with the paracetamol, but her hands were shaking too much to open it. She stood at the back door of the mansion and finally let herself cry. Just for 1 minute. Just to let some of the pressure out. Then she wiped her face, threw away her ruined slippers because there was no saving them now, and walked barefoot into the house to continue her walk. She felt completely and utterly alone. More alone than she'd ever felt, even when her father died, even when her mother got sick, even when the doctors said Neko would die without money they didn't have. This was a different kind of alone. This was the loneliness of being seen and still being invisible. Of being humiliated and having no one defend you. Of being human and being treated like garbage. And the worst part. She knew it would happen again. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. Cynthia had tasted power, and power was addictive. But Grace didn't know that the worst humiliation was still coming. The one that would involve thousands of strangers. The one that would be documented forever. The one that would haunt her even in her prayers. That came 3 days later, and it came with a bright ring light and a smile. The digital shaming, when it came, was perhaps the cruelest because it was permanent. A moment of humiliation captured, uploaded, and immortalized for strangers to consume with their breakfast. Cynthia was obsessed with her social media in a way that went beyond hobby or career. It was her identity, her validation, her proof that she mattered. Every meal was photographed. Every outfit was documented. Every moment of her day was content, carefully curated and filtered to present a life that was enviable, aspirational, perfect. Her followers loved her. 2 million people double-tapped her photos, commented heart emojis, asked where she bought her clothes, praised her beauty, her style, her life. They had no idea what happened behind the camera. One afternoon, she decided to do an impromptu Instagram live session. A tour of my closet, she'd announced to her followers an hour earlier, the post carefully designed to build anticipation. Her closet was, admittedly, impressive. It was a room the size of a studio apartment, with custom lighting, organized shelving, a chandelier, and enough designer clothes to stock a boutique. Grace was in the closet at the time, alone, or so she thought. She was on her knees, working on the bottom shelf of Cynthia's massive shoe collection. She was dusting each pair carefully, making sure there were no scuff marks, no dust, no imperfection. There were over 100 pairs. It was mind-numbing work. Her back ached from kneeling. Her hands were cramping. She had no idea Cynthia had even entered the room until she heard her voice, bright and fake, cooing at her phone. "Hey guys. Thanks for joining me. So, as promised, we're doing a full closet tour today." Grace's head snapped up. Panic flooded her system. She tried to make herself smaller, to hide behind a rack of designer dresses, to become invisible. But the closet was brightly lit for the camera, every corner visible. And this, guys, is my wall of Birkins. And the divine. This one is the Himalayan, it took me 6 months to get it. Cynthia's voice was syrupy sweet for the camera. Grace held her breath, not moving, praying Cynthia would finish and leave. But of course, she didn't. Cynthia found her. She panned the camera, slowly, deliberately, from her own perfectly made-up face, her contoured cheeks and glossy lips, right down to where Grace was crushed. Grace looked up, her eyes wide with terror, her face streaked with sweat, a dusting rag still clutched in her hand. The bright light of the iPhone camera was blinding. Grace couldn't see anything but the light and the knowledge that thousands of people were watching her right now. Watching her at her lowest. Watching her humiliation in real time. And look. Cynthia thrilled to her audience, her voice dripping with false enthusiasm. Here's my help. The maid. Grace. Say hi to my followers, Grace. Grace just stared, frozen like a deer in headlights. She couldn't speak. Her voice had completely left her. Her mouth moved but no sound came out. Cynthia let out a little laugh, that same cold sound. Oh, she's so shy. Isn't she just authentic? So real, right? We're trying to civilize her, but it's a process, you know. It's like a project. A makeover, but for life skills. She laughed again. The comments on the live video started flying in, visible to Grace even from her position. The phone screen was tilted just enough that she could see the words scrolling by. OMG, she looks so scared, face with tears of joy. LOL, what is she even wearing? Why is she in your closet? LMAO. She's kinda cute in a village-wide way. This is so awkward to watch. Cynthia, you're so generous for helping her red heart. Cynthia saw that last comment and her face lit up. Someone said I'm generous. You guys are so sweet. Yes, we're trying our best to help her, you know. Give her opportunities she'd never have otherwise. It's charity work, basically. She added a little emoji typing sound effect. LOL nail polish. She finally, mercifully, panned the camera away. Anyway, back to the bags. This one is vintage Chanel. Her voice faded as she moved to another section of the closet. Grace stayed on her knees, trembling, unable to move. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought she might faint. Her hands were shaking. She felt violated in a way she couldn't even name. Not just seen, but displayed. Not just humiliated, but made into entertainment. Into content. She stayed there, frozen, until Cynthia finally ended the live session 20 minutes later and left the closet, humming to herself, pleased with the engagement numbers. Grace finally stood up, her legs weak. She stumbled to the small bathroom attached to the closet and locked herself inside. She sat on the closed toilet lid and put her head in her hands. Later that night, back in her tiny staff quarters room, Busy came to find her. Busy's phone screen was cracked, held together with tape, but the image on it was crystal clear. Grace, I saved the video. I thought you should know. Grace didn't want to watch it. But she needed to. She needed to see what thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of strangers had seen. The video had been saved and reshared by Cynthia's fans. It was everywhere. Grace watched herself on the small screen. She saw her own terrified face, the sweat, the dusting rag, the frozen panic. She watched Cynthia mock her, make her into a joke, a project, a before picture in someone else's success story. The comments were worse the second time. Some were pitying, but most were mocking or weirdly possessive, like she was a pet. LOL, she looks traumatized. Cynthia is such a good person for giving her a job. I wonder if she even understands what Instagram is called. She needs a makeover ASAP. This is why you go to school, kids. Grace handed the phone back to Busy, her hand shaking. Madam is wicked, Busy whispered, her eyes full of genuine pity and fear. She's making fun of you for her followers. For likes. For money. Grace just stared at the wall. She felt like a zoo animal, put on display for the amusement of a world she would never belong to, would never understand, and that would never see her as fully human. Her phone buzzed. Another text from her aunt. Another hospital bill reminder. Another deadline. She shut her eyes and tried to remember why she was here. Tried to remember Neka's face. Tried to find some reason to wake up tomorrow and do it all again. But it was getting harder. And the worst was still to come. The accusation came on a Saturday night, during one of Daniel's dinner parties. These weren't parties in the normal sense. There was no dancing, no loud music, no joy. They were gatherings of power. Displays of wealth and influence. Politicians sat next to oil executives. Bankers laughed with tech entrepreneurs. Their wives, dripping in diamonds and gold, compared notes on their latest trips to Dubai. Grace and the other staff were serving, moving like well-trained ghosts through the glittering crowd. Silent. Efficient. Invisible. They wore their best uniforms, pressed and perfect, but they might as well have been furniture for all the attention the guests paid them. Grace was clearing plates from the main dining table, her head down, her movements careful. The guests had moved to the sitting room for after-dinner drinks. The massive table was littered with the remains of the meal, half-eaten pieces of roast lamb, crystal glasses with red wine dregs, crumpled napkins. The room smelled like expensive perfume and even more expensive wine. She was stacking plates carefully, trying not to make noise, when a scream pierced the air. My bracelet. My bracelet is gone. Every conversation in the house stopped. Grace froze, a stack of dirty plates balanced in her hands. It was Cynthia. Of course it was Cynthia. She was standing by the grand piano in the sitting room, her hand at her throat in theatrical horror, her eyes wide, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. My diamond bracelet. The one Daniel gave me. It was right here. She gestured at her bare wrist. It's gone. Someone stole it. The room went completely silent. 20 of the most powerful people in Lagos turned to look. Grace could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. Cynthia's eyes scanned the room, landing, with perfect, practiced precision, on Grace. Their eyes met across the two rooms. Grace saw something flicker in Cynthia's expression. Something cold and calculated. It was her. Cynthia shrieked, pointing directly at Grace with a trembling finger. It was the maid. Grace. Grace stumbled backward, the plates rattling dangerously in her hands. What? No, madam. I didn't. I saw her. Cynthia's voice was rising, becoming hysterical, her performance perfect. I saw her looking at it earlier. She was staring at it. I could see it in her eyes. She was jealous, she wanted it. She's been stealing from me for weeks, I just knew it. I didn't take anything, madam. I swear. I swear on my sister's life. Grace's voice was desperate, tears already spilling down her cheeks. Don't you dare bring your sister into this. Cynthia yelled, her face contorted with righteous fury. You disgusting little thief. You thought you could steal from me. In my own home. She whirled to face the shocked guest. Do you see? This is what happens when you try to help these people. You let them into your home, you feed them, you give them opportunities, and they repay you by stealing. Several of the guests were nodding. One of the wives clutched her own jewelry protectively. Security! Cynthia screamed. Security, get in here. Now. Two of the estate guards, Ademu and Femi, ran into the room, their faces confused and concerned. They'd been stationed outside, watching the cars. They had no idea what was happening. Search her. Cynthia commanded, her voice sharp and authoritative. Search her now. She has my bracelet. Madam, please, no. Grace was sobbing now, tears running down her face, her whole body shaking. The plate slipped from her hands and crashed to the marble floor. The sound of shattering china was deafening in the silent room. Pieces scattered everywhere. I didn't take anything. Please. I didn't. She's destroying evidence. Cynthia shrieked. Look at her. Guilty. She's completely guilty. Ademo and Femi looked at each other, then at Daniel, who had stood up from his chair. Daniel looked confused, uncomfortable, completely out of his depth. This was his fiancée. These were his guests. His reputation was on the line. Cynthia, are you absolutely sure about this? He asked, his voice careful. Maybe you just misplaced it. Of course I'm sure. Cynthia snapped at him, her eyes flashing with anger that he would even question her. Daniel, are you seriously taking her side over mine? Your fiancé. Do you know how this looks? The guests were whispering now, a low buzz of scandal and judgment. How embarrassing for Daniel. You just can't trust these village girls. They come here with nothing and think they can take what we have. This is exactly why I don't let my staff near my jewelry. From his position in the corner of the room, standing by the bar where he'd been opening a bottle of wine for a guest, Uche the driver watched the entire scene. His face was blank, neutral, but his eyes were sharp. He was watching Cynthia. And his jaw was tight with something that looked like certainty. Take her away, Cynthia commanded the guards, waving her hand dismissively. Lock her up until the police arrive. I'm pressing full charges. Theft. Breaking trust. Everything. No. Please. Please, sir. Grace turned to Daniel, her hands clasped in front of her like she was praying, begging. Sir, I didn't take it. Please, you have to believe me. I would never. I need this job. My sister needs me. Please. But Daniel just stood there. His face was troubled, conflicted, but he said nothing. His silence was permission. His silence was condemnation. The guards grabbed Grace's arms, one on each side. She tried to pull away, but their grips were firm. Please. Somebody. Anybody. I'm innocent. She was screaming now, her voice raw and desperate. The guests looked away, embarrassed by the scene, by the emotion, by the ugliness of it all. Nobody wanted to get involved. Nobody wanted to be associated with a thief. The guards dragged her out of the dining room, through the hallway, past the kitchen where Esther and Busy were crying into their hands, where Mama Ngozi was shaking her head with tears streaming down her face. Past Mrs. Ode, who looked away, unable to meet Grace's eyes. They took her to her tiny staff quarters room, barely bigger than a closet, with just a thin mattress, a wooden chair, and a small window with bars. They pushed her inside. The police will come in the morning, Ademo said, his voice flat, emotionless. He couldn't afford emotion. Emotion didn't pay bills. Don't try to run. There's nowhere to go. They locked the door from the outside. Grace heard the click of the padlock. She was a prisoner. She collapsed onto her thin mattress, her whole body racked with sobs. Her life was over. Completely over. She would be arrested. She would have a criminal record. No one would ever hire her again. Her family would be disgraced. And worst of all, Neka would die. Without Grace's salary, without any hope of treatment, her little sister would die. She had failed. After everything she'd endured, all the humiliation, all the suffering, all the prayers, she had failed. She curled into a ball on the mattress and cried until she had no tears left. The room was dark. The bad window showed a slice of night sky, stars she couldn't see through her swollen eyes. She could hear the party continuing in the distance. Laughter. Music. Life going on as if nothing had happened. As if she didn't matter. Because to them, she didn't. She never had. She wasn't fired immediately, which was almost worse than being fired would have been. To her shock and confusion, Daniel told the guards the next morning to hold off on calling the police. He said he would handle it internally, whatever that meant. He needed time to think, he said. Time to decide what to do. So Grace was let out of her locked room, but she was now a prisoner of a different kind. She was the accused thief who still lived in the house. The cloud of suspicion followed her everywhere. The other staff members avoided her, afraid that association with her would taint them too. The guests from that night had spread the story. Everyone knew. Everyone had heard that the help had tried to steal from her employer. Grace moved through the house like a ghost. She did her work mechanically, her mind numb. She barely ate. She barely slept. She was just waiting for the axe to fall, for the final blow that would end this nightmare one way or another. Sunday came. The entire household, staff included, was required to attend church. It was one of the non-negotiable rules. Daniel and Cynthia went to a high-profile Pentecostal church in Lekki, one of those megachurches with thousands of members, stadium seating, massive screens, and a celebrity pastor who preached the prosperity gospel. God wants you to be rich. God wants you to be successful. Poverty is a sin. Wealth is a blessing. The staff sat in the back rows, in a designated section. Grace sat with Esther, Busy, Mrs. Ode, and the others. She stared at the stage, barely hearing the worship songs, barely registering the prayers. She felt hollow. Then it was time for testimonies. The pastor called for anyone who wanted to share what God had done for them. This was a regular part of the service. People came to the stage to talk about business deals, healings, financial breakthroughs. The congregation always applauded, always shouted hallelujah, always celebrated God's favor on the blessed. Cynthia, looking like an angel in a white lace dress with a matching hat and white heels, stood up from her front row seat. She walked to the stage, her steps measured, her face glowing with holy light. She took the microphone from the pastor. The congregation of over 200 people watched, attentive. Praise the Lord. She began, her voice filled with emotion, trembling just slightly. Hallelujah, the church responded, their voices thundering in the cavernous space. I want to thank God for His protection, Cynthia continued, pausing for effect. I want to thank God for discernment. For the ability to see the truth. To see through deception. Grace, sitting in the back row with the other staff, felt a cold dread creep up her spine like icy fingers. No. She couldn't. She wouldn't. But she did. You see, my brothers and sisters, Cynthia said, her voice rising with emotion, the devil is busy. He is so busy. He will try to send thieves into your home. He will send snakes into your garden. He will send wolves in sheep's clothing. He will even send them wearing the uniform of servants. She paused dramatically, letting the words sink in. Several people in the congregation murmured amen. Her eyes found Grace in the back row. The entire staff section froze. Grace felt like she couldn't breathe. The air was too thick. Some people, Cynthia continued, her voice growing stronger, more righteous, they pretend to be holy. They pretend to be humble. They say yes, more, and no, more. They bow their heads. They go to church. But inside, they are thieves. They are vipers. They are agents of darkness sent by the enemy to destroy your home, to steal your peace, to bring chaos into your life. Preach, sister. Preach, someone yelled from the middle section. Grace wanted to stand up. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell everyone that this was a lie, that she was innocent, that this woman was using God's house to destroy her. But she couldn't move. She was paralyzed by shock and humiliation. God exposes them. Cynthia shouted, her voice reaching a crescendo. Every single time. You cannot hide from God. He sees everything. He knows everything. And He will expose every snake, every thief, every demon pretending to be an angel. Yes, Lord, the congregation responded. I thank God, Cynthia said, and now there were real tears in her eyes, or what looked like real tears. I thank God for exposing the snake in my own home this very week. Right in my own house. I thank Him for not allowing the enemy to succeed. For protecting what is mine. For showing me the truth before it was too late. Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. The church erupted in applause. People were standing. They were clapping. They were praising God for exposing the snake. Grace felt like she was going to be sick. Her stomach lurched. The room was spinning. The ushers were glancing at their section now, confused by the visible tension, by the way all the staff members had gone rigid, by the way Grace was swaying in her seat. The pastor came forward, nodding in approval. Sister Cynthia, God bless you. This is a powerful testimony. We must always be vigilant. Thank you for sharing. Cynthia dabbed at her eyes with a white handkerchief, the picture of wounded innocence and divine favor. She walked back to her front row seat, where Daniel was sitting. He squeezed her hand. She smiled at him bravely. She had just publicly, spiritually humiliated Grace. Had called her a demon in front of hundreds of people. Had weaponized God Himself against her. Grace couldn't take it anymore. She stood up, stumbling, pushing past Esther and Busy. She half ran, half stumbled down the aisle, past the ushers, past the shocked faces, out of the sanctuary. She could hear people whispering behind her. Is that the maid? The one who stole? Demons always run from the truth. She made it to the church bathroom, burst into a stall, and threw up. Everything. The small breakfast she'd forced down. The shame. The fear. The absolute despair. Her tears mixed with the vomit on the cold tile floor. She heaved until there was nothing left. Even God's house wasn't safe for her. Even here, she was the villain. The demon. The snake. She heard the door open. Footsteps. She froze. Grace. It was Busy's voice, soft and worried. Grace, are you okay? Grace couldn't answer. She just sobbed, her forehead pressed against the cold metal of the stall door. I'm so sorry, Busy whispered. This is so wrong. This is so wrong. But being sorry didn't change anything. Being sorry didn't stop Cynthia. Being sorry didn't save Grace. From outside the bathroom, standing near the church entrance, Uche watched the whole scene unfold. He'd been standing there during the testimony. He'd seen everything. His phone was in his hand. He'd recorded Cynthia's entire testimony, every word, every theatrical gesture, every calculated tear. He saved the file carefully, adding it to a folder that was growing larger every day. The evidence was mounting. He just needed a little more time. Just a little more proof. Then it would all come crashing down. But would Grace survive long enough to see it? He wasn't sure. And that uncertainty kept him up at night. The final blow came on a Wednesday afternoon, bright and hot and merciless. Grace got an emergency call from her aunt. She'd been in the laundry room, folding towels, her mind blank, going through the motions of survival. When her phone rang and she saw her aunt's name, her heart dropped. Calls during the day were never good. Calls during the day meant crisis. Grace. Her aunt's voice was panicked, shrill. Grace, you need to come home. Now. What? Auntie, what happened? Is it Neka? She collapsed this morning. They rushed her to the hospital. The doctors say her kidneys are failing completely. They've moved her to ICU. Grace, if we don't get 2 million naira in 48 hours, they're going to stop treatment. They said she won't make it without intensive care. The world tilted. Grace grabbed the edge of the washing machine to steady herself. 2 million. In 2 days. I've begged everyone, Grace. Everyone. Nobody has that kind of money. The church took up a collection, they got 80,000. It's not enough. It's not nearly enough. Grace, what are we going to do? She's asking for you. She keeps asking when you're coming home. Grace's vision blurred. Neko. Her baby sister. 13 years old. Dying. I'll figure something out, auntie. I'll find a way. Tell her I love her. Tell her to hold on. She ended the call. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. 2 million in 48 hours. Impossible. Completely impossible. She made 60,000 a month. It would take her years to save that, even if she didn't eat, didn't breathe, didn't exist. She was beyond desperate. She had no options left. No plan B. No safety net. She broke every rule she'd been taught about proper protocol. She ran. She ran through the hallways, up the main stairs that staff weren't supposed to use, straight to Daniel's home office. She didn't knock. She didn't wait. She burst through the door. Daniel was at his desk, on a video conference call, his laptop open. He looked up, shocked. Cynthia was in the office too, lounging on the leather sofa, reading a fashion magazine, her legs crossed elegantly. "Sir. Please, sir." Grace's voice was raw, desperate. "What is the meaning of this?" Cynthia sat up straight, her face immediately hard. "Are you completely mad? Have you lost your mind?" "Sir, please." Grace fell to her knees right there on the office floor, not caring about dignity, not caring about pride. She had none left to lose. "My sister. My little sister, Neka. She's dying. She's in ICU. The hospital needs 2 million. Now. Today." She was crying, the words stumbling out in a rush. "Please, sir. I'm begging you. Give it to me as an advance. Take it from my salary. I'll work for you for free. For 10 years. For 20 years. I don't care. Just please. Please save my sister." She fumbled in her pocket for the hospital letter her aunt had sent her last week, the official letter with the treatment cost. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely unfold it. "Please, sir. Look. It's real. She's real. She's dying." Daniel's face showed conflict. He looked at the desperation in her eyes, at the tears streaming down her face. For a moment, just a brief moment, Grace thought she saw compassion there. "Grace, I..." But before he could finish, Cynthia was on her feet. She crossed the office in 3 strides and snatched the hospital letter from Grace's trembling hands. She glanced at it, her eyes scanning quickly. Then she let out a harsh, mocking laugh. "Kidney transplant." She scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. "Is it not your mates that have healthy kidneys? You people come from the village and bring all your diseases here, all your problems, all your drama." She looked at Daniel, her face sharp, calculating. "Darling, don't be a fool. Can't you see what this is? It's a scam. It's so obvious. There is no sister. There is no hospital. This is fake. She's real." Grace cried, scrambling to pull her phone from her pocket. "I have her picture. I have proof. The hospital can confirm. Please." "This is just another trick," Cynthia said coldly, cutting her off. "Just an excuse to get money and run away. She's a thief, Daniel. We already know this. Everyone knows this. And now she's adding liar to her list of sins." She looked down at the hospital letter in her hand, and then, deliberately, maintaining eye contact with Grace, she tore it in half. Then in quarters. Then smaller pieces. The sound of ripping paper was loud in the silent office. She threw the pieces at Grace, who was still on her knees. The paper fluttered down like confetti, landing on her head, her shoulders, the floor around her. "Go and pray to your village gods," Cynthia said, her voice like ice, like death. "Or better yet, go back to your village and die with your fake sister. We don't need thieves and liars in this house." The cruelty of it hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Grace looked at the pieces of paper scattered around her. Official hospital letterhead, ripped to pieces. Her sister's medical report, destroyed. Her last hope, torn apart. She looked up at Daniel. He was still sitting at his desk. He looked uncomfortable, conflicted, but he said nothing. He didn't defend her. He didn't tell Cynthia to stop. He didn't offer to help. His silence was the loudest sound Grace had ever heard. It was the sound of abandonment. It was the sound of her sister's death sentence being signed. Grace stopped crying. A terrible, cold calm settled over her, the kind of calm that comes when there's nothing left to lose, when you've fallen so far that you've hit the bottom and gone through it to someplace deeper and darker. She stood up slowly, her knees cracking from kneeling on the hard floor. She didn't look at Daniel. She didn't look at Cynthia. She just looked at the pieces of paper on the floor, her sister's life scattered like garbage. She turned and walked out of the office, her steps slow, mechanical. She walked past the other staff members who had gathered in the hallway, drawn by her screams. Their faces were full of pity, but pity couldn't save Neka. She walked past them all without seeing them. She walked through the mansion, through the gleaming hallways with their expensive art, past the pristine kitchen with its marble countertops, through the service corridors. She walked until she found the only place in this entire massive house where she felt even remotely safe. The laundry room. She opened the door, stepped inside, and closed it behind her. The room smelled like detergent and fabric softener. The washing machines hummed their endless cycle. She slid down the wall and sat on the cold tile floor, surrounded by piles of dirty towels waiting to be washed. She pulled out her phone. One new message from her aunt. Just 2 words and a number. Neka deteriorating. 36 hours. 36 hours until they stopped treatment. 36 hours until her sister died. 36 hours to perform an impossible miracle. Grace put her head in her hands. She had no tears left. She was completely empty. Hollowed out. There was nothing inside her but grief and desperation and a yawning, bottomless darkness. It was 2 a.m. when Grace finally gave up. The mansion was silent, everyone asleep in their comfortable beds, their lives continuing undisturbed. She was still in the laundry room, sitting on the cold tile floor, surrounded by piles of dirty towels that needed washing for people who had everything while she had nothing. Her phone was in her hand, the screen black, the battery at 3%. Another text message had come through an hour ago. Neka unconscious. Doctor says 24 hours maximum. Come home if you can. Should see you. 24 hours. One day. One day for her sister to die while Grace sat in a mansion in Lagos, unable to help, unable to save her, unable to even say goodbye. She had failed. After everything she had endured, all the mockery, all the accusations, all the hunger and shame and humiliation, she had failed at the only thing that mattered. Saving Neka. She rocked back and forth, her arms wrapped around her knees, a low moan escaping from somewhere deep in her chest. She had no more tears. Her body had run out. She was just empty. Completely empty. She bowed her head, her forehead touching the cold metal of the washing machine. The metal was cool against her burning skin. She could hear her own breath, ragged and uneven. And then, because there was nothing else left to do, no one else to turn to, nowhere else to go, she prayed. She prayed the prayer of the completely broken, the absolutely desperate, the utterly forsaken. God, she whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. Father Lord. Jehovah. Yahweh. Whatever name you want to be called. Her body started to shake. You see me. You see what they have done to me. You know I didn't steal anything. You know I didn't fight back. You know I have tried to be good, to be patient, to endure. A sob tore from her chest, raw and painful. I have been humble. I have been patient. I have taken everything they threw at me. But my sister is dying, God. My Neka is dying. She's 13 years old. She hasn't even lived yet. She clutched her dead phone, the black screen reflecting her own tear-stained face. I am finished. I have nowhere to go. No one to call. No one who cares if I live or die. Even my phone is dying, just like my hope, just like my sister, just like everything I've ever loved. Her voice broke completely. God, if you are real, if you are there, if you can hear me in this laundry room in this mansion where nobody sees me and nobody cares, please. Please send me one person. Just one. One person who will tell me the truth. One person who will help me. One person who will believe me. I am so tired, God. So tired of fighting. So tired of being strong. So tired of enduring. I can't do this anymore. I can't carry this anymore. I don't have anything left. I'm leaving it in your hands because I have no hands left. I'm giving it to you because I have nothing left to give. If you don't help me, I don't know what will happen. I don't know what I'll do. I don't know if I can survive this. Please, she whispered, her voice barely audible now. Just one sign. Just one person. Just one miracle. That's all I'm asking. Just one. She collapsed onto the pile of dirty towels, her body curling into a fetal position. The sheer weight of her sorrow, her exhaustion, her complete and utter defeat pulled her under like an ocean wave. Her eyes closed. Within minutes, she had fallen into a deep, dreamless sleep on the cold laundry room floor, her prayer hanging in the damp air like incense, rising up to a heaven that she desperately hoped was listening. Outside the louvered windows of the laundry room, hidden in the shadows of the garden, a figure stood motionless. It was Uche. He was on his nightly rounds, part of his cover as a driver who took security seriously. He'd heard voices, or rather, one voice. Grace's voice. He had heard every word of her prayer. Every broken plea. Every desperate cry. Every moment of her complete surrender. He stood in the darkness for a long time, his face tight with emotion, his jaw clenched. His hands were fist at his sides. This had gone on long enough. More than long enough. It was time to end it. He pulled out his phone, the screen illuminating his face in the darkness. He didn't text Daniel. Not yet. First, he saved the new recording. He'd been recording Grace's prayer. Evidence. Proof. Documentation of Cynthia's cruelty and its consequences. The file saved. Grace. Laundry room. Prayer. 2:15 a.m. Then he opened his messages and sent a single text to his uncle, Daniel's father, the patriarch of the Okoye family. It's worse than we thought. Much worse. Cynthia is destroying lives. I have everything documented. Video, audio, testimonies. It's time to act. Tomorrow. We can't wait any longer. An innocent girl's sister is dying while Cynthia plays games. The message showed as delivered. Then, almost immediately, 3 dots appeared. His uncle was awake. His uncle was responding. Send me everything. I'm calling an emergency family meeting for tomorrow afternoon. Daniel needs to see all of it. All of it, Uche. No more delays. That woman is a demon. Uche allowed himself a small, grim smile in the darkness. Finally, justice was coming. He looked through the window at Grace's sleeping form, curled up on the towels like a child. She had prayed for one person. God had already put him in position weeks ago. She just didn't know it yet. Hold on, Grace, he whispered to the window. Just hold on for one more day. Your help is here. He turned and walked back into the shadows, his phone in his hand, his evidence secured. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the truth would come out. Tomorrow, Cynthia would face what she'd done. And Grace would finally be free. Grace woke to the sound of the laundry room door opening. Sunlight streamed through the windows, bright and harsh, blinding her. She had no idea what time it was. Her body was stiff, her back aching from sleeping on the cold tile floor. Her neck was cramped. Her uniform was wrinkled and damp from the humidity of the room. Her first thought, the automatic panic of someone living in fear, was, I'm late. Mrs. Ade will be furious. I'll be fired. I need this job. She scrambled to her feet, her legs weak and unsteady. Her head spun. When had she last eaten? She couldn't remember. Yesterday. The day before. But it wasn't Mrs. Ade standing in the doorway. It was Uche. The driver. He was holding a plastic bag and a water bottle. Grace's heart hammered in her chest. Terror flooded her system. Was he here to throw her out? To tell her the police were waiting? To deliver the final blow? Sir. I'm sorry. I fell asleep. I didn't mean to. I'll get back to work immediately. Grace. His voice was quiet, but it cut through her panic like a knife through cloth. It was firm. Kind. The first time anyone in this cursed house had said her name with actual kindness in weeks. Grace froze, staring at him. You were praying last night, he said simply, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. Grace's eyes widened. Horror and confusion word on her face. How did you know that? I heard you, Uche said, his expression serious. I heard everything. I was outside. Night rounds. Grace backed away instinctively, pressing herself against the washing machine. Did Madam Cynthia send you? Is she going to use my prayer against me too? Is nothing sacred? No. Uche's face was grim, hard. Madam Cynthia is the reason I'm here. But not for the reason you think. He looked at her, his eyes holding a strange intensity, and suddenly Grace noticed something she'd never noticed before. He had Daniel's eyes. The same shape. The same color. The family resemblance was there, once you looked for it. My full name is not just Uche, he said carefully. It's Uche Okoye. Daniel is my cousin. My father's brother's son. Grace just stared, her mind struggling to process the words. Your cousin? Yes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He showed her a picture, an old graduation photo. A younger Uche and a younger Daniel, both in their graduation gowns, arms around each other, smiling. The family resemblance was unmistakable now. My uncle, Daniel's father, asked me to work here 6 months ago, Uche explained. Not as just a driver, but as an observer. To watch. To document. To keep an eye on things. Grace's mind was reeling. The driver was family. Had been family this whole time. But, why? Why are you telling me this? Because you were right about Cynthia, Uche said, his voice hardening. She is a snake. But she's also much more than that. She's a thief. She's been embezzling money from Daniel's company for months. 50 million naira and counting. My uncle suspected it. I was sent to find proof. He held up the plastic bag. First things first. Eat. This is akara and bread from the buka outside the estate. It's still warm. And charge your phone. He pulled a power bank from his pocket and handed it to her. Grace's hands trembled as she took it. She looked inside the plastic bag. The smell of freshly fried akara hit her, and her stomach clenched with sudden, desperate hunger. When had she last eaten? Her hands shook as she pulled out a piece. I don't understand. She whispered. You don't need to understand everything right now, Uche said firmly. You just need to eat, charge your phone, and be ready. He swiped his phone screen and pulled up a video. Last night, after I heard your prayer, I sent everything I have to Daniel. All my evidence. And to his father. They've been reviewing it all night. He turned the phone to show her. Grace's eyes widened. It was CCTV footage. From Cynthia's closet. The timestamp showed the night of the dinner party, about an hour before Cynthia screamed about the missing bracelet. The video showed Cynthia in her closet, alone, laughing while talking on her phone. As Grace watched, Cynthia reached up, took off her diamond bracelet, and placed it carefully in a small jewelry box on the shelf. Then she checked her appearance in the mirror, smiled at her reflection, and walked out of the closet. Before she ever screamed. Before she ever accused Grace. She faked it, Grace whispered, her voice barely audible. She faked the whole thing. She faked it, Uche confirmed, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. She faked it specifically to disgrace you. To destroy you. I have her on camera hiding her own bracelet, then I have audio of her screaming that you stole it. He played another file. A voice recording. Cynthia's voice, crystal clear, from her church testimony. Snakes in uniform, agents of darkness, thieves pretending to be holy. He played another clip. Cynthia on the phone, her voice dripping with malice. That dirty village rat thinks anyone believes her. I told them she stole it and they all believed me immediately. It's almost too easy. Grace felt like she couldn't breathe. You recorded everything. Everything, Uche said, his voice like steel. The gate incident. The kitchen. The Instagram live. The church testimony. The hospital letter. What she said about your sister dying. Every single moment of cruelty. Daniel has heard it all now. He listened to everything last night. He barely slept. And Grace, he is not happy. Not happy at all. So what happens now? Grace asked, her voice small, afraid to hope. Now, Uche said, his face set with determination, we finish it. Daniel has called an emergency family meeting for this afternoon. 1 o'clock. He's invited Cynthia's parents. He's told her it's to formally set the wedding date, to make the announcement official. He looked directly at Grace. He wants you there. Me? Grace shrank back, shaking her head violently. No. No, I can't. I can't face her. I can't face them. Please don't make me. Yes, you, Uche's voice was firm but not unkind. You have to be there, Grace. She humiliated you publicly. She will be exposed publicly. That's justice. That's how this works. He checked his watch. It's 9 a.m. now. You have 4 hours. Go wash your face. Eat this food. Charge your phone. Call your aunt. Tell her. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Tell her that help is coming. Tell her not to let the hospital stop treatment. Tell her to hold on for 1 more day. But the money. Grace's voice broke. Let God handle the money, Uche said quietly. You prayed for one person to help you. Here I am. Your job now is to stand in the truth. To be present. To let justice happen. He paused at the door, his hand on the handle, and turned back to look at her. Your suffering wasn't wasted, Grace. It wasn't random. It wasn't meaningless. It was preparation. It was documentation. It was evidence. He met her eyes. The same people who watch you suffer are going to watch you rise. And when you rise with the truth on your side. He left, the door clicking shut behind him. Grace stood there, the power bank in one hand, the bag of hot food in the other, her dead phone lying on top of the washing machine. She looked at them like they were foreign objects, like she couldn't quite understand what they were for. Then her phone lit up as it began to charge. Grace ate slowly, each bite of akra tasting like hope itself. The bread was soft, still warm. As her phone charged, messages flooded in. Her aunt had been trying to reach her all night. 6 missed calls. 10 desperate messages. The last one, sent an hour ago, made her hands shake. Grace, I'm sorry. I know you tried. Come home if you can. Let Neka see you one last time. Grace dialed immediately. Her aunt answered on the first ring. Grace. Grace, is that you? Yes, auntie. Listen to me carefully. Don't let them stop the treatment. Do you hear me? Tell the hospital payment is coming today. But Grace, where will we get 2 million? We have nothing left. I don't know how yet, auntie. But this morning, something changed. God sent help. Please, just hold on until tonight. Can you do that? There was a long silence. Then, okay, Grace. I'll tell them. But if this doesn't work, tell Neka I love her. Tell her to be strong. Grace ended the call and looked at her reflection in the small bathroom mirror. Her eyes were swollen, her face gaunt, but something had shifted. A spark of defiance glimmered where only despair had lived. She washed her face, smoothed her uniform, rebraided her hair with steady hands. She wasn't walking into the meeting looking defeated. She was walking in with dignity intact. At 12:45, Uche returned. But he wasn't in his driver's uniform anymore. He wore a sharp charcoal suit that transformed him completely. He looked like what he truly was, an Okoye. It's time, he said simply. They walked through the mansion together. Staff members stopped mid-task to stare. Mrs. Aid's eyes widened. Esther and Busy whispered urgently. Even Mama Ngozi emerged from the kitchen, sensing that everything was about to change. The grand dining room doors loomed ahead. Grace could hear voices inside, Cynthia's high laugh, the clink of glasses, casual conversation. Uche looked at her. Remember, you don't have to say anything. Just stand in your truth. He pushed the doors open. The room fell silent. Daniel sat at the head of the table, his face carefully neutral. His father, a large man with steel gray hair and piercing eyes, sat to his right. His mother, dignified in traditional attire, sat to his left. Cynthia glowed in a bright yellow dress beside Daniel, radiating confidence. Her parents, a politician and his society wife, completed the gathering. When Grace walked in behind Uche in his suit, Cynthia's smile faltered. What is she doing here? Cynthia's voice was sharp. And Uche, why aren't you in uniform? Go wait by the car. Uche is my guest, Daniel said, his voice dangerously calm. And Grace is our guest of honor. Cynthia's mother laughed nervously. What a strange joke, Daniel. It's no joke, Daniel's father boomed. Sit down, Cynthia. And for once in your life, stop talking and start listening. The temperature in the room dropped. Cynthia sat, confusion and the first hint of fear crossing her face. Daniel, what is this? You said we were setting the wedding date. I lied, Daniel said simply. We need to talk about your bracelet. The one you said Grace stole. Cynthia relaxed slightly, thinking she was on familiar ground. Oh, that. Don't worry, darling, I've already replaced it. Did Grace steal it? Daniel interrupted. Yes. Of course she did. Daniel, this is ridiculous. Fire her and let's eat. Uche, Daniel nodded. Play the clip. The projector screen lit up. Crystal clear CCTV footage filled the room. The timestamp showed the dinner party night, 1 hour before Cynthia's accusation. They all watched as Cynthia, alone in her closet, laughed on the phone while deliberately removing her bracelet and hiding it in a jewelry box. Cynthia's mother gasped. Her father's face turned crimson. That's a deepfake. Cynthia shrieked, jumping up. It's AI. You're framing me. Am I? Daniel asked calmly. Play the next one. Cynthia's voice filled the room, her church testimony. Thieves in uniform, snakes, agents of darkness. Daniel's mother closed her eyes in horror. The next one, Daniel commanded. Cynthia's voice again, from a phone call, that dirty village rat. I told them she stole it and they believed me immediately. It was almost too easy. These people are so stupid. The room was suffocating with tension. And the last one, Daniel said, his voice like thunder. The audio from his office played. Cynthia tearing the hospital letter. Her voice, cold and cruel, go back to your village and die with your fake sister. We don't need thieves and liars in this house. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Damning. Cynthia's father turned to her, his face twisted with rage and disgust. What have you done? But the money. Cynthia stammered, turning to Daniel. I was going to pay it back. You call embezzling 50 million naira borrowing? Daniel's father roared. Show them, Uche. Bank statements projected onto the screen. Illegal transfers. Offshore accounts. 8 months of systematic theft. It was all there. Undeniable. Devastating. Cynthia collapsed into her chair, her perfect facade crumbling. Then Daniel Okoye did something that would echo through Lagos society for years. He stood, walked across the room, and knelt before Grace. He took her hand gently. Grace, I am so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I'm sorry I let this happen in my home. Please forgive me. Cynthia let out a strangled scream. Get up, Daniel. Get up. Don't you dare. Daniel didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on Grace. Please. Forgive us. Security. Daniel called out, standing. Ademo and Femi entered, looking at Cynthia. No. Daniel, please. I love you. Cynthia dropped to her knees, crawling toward him, grabbing at his legs. I'm sorry. My followers. I'll be ruined. You should have thought of that, Daniel said coldly, stepping away, before you built your empire on cruelty and lies. Get her out of my house. As the guards grabbed her arms, the same way they'd grabbed Grace's, Cynthia screamed. You can't do this. I'll sue you. I'll destroy you. With what evidence? Uche held up his phone. I have everything. Every video. Every recording. Every transaction. Should I send it to the blogs? To your precious followers? Cynthia's face went white. They dragged her toward the door, her yellow dress twisted, her hair falling from its perfect style, her makeup smeared with tears. I hate you, she shrieked at Grace. You're still nothing. You'll always be nothing. Grace met her eyes, and in a voice quiet but clear, said, I forgive you. Those 3 words hit harder than any insult could have. Cynthia stopped struggling momentarily, staring in disbelief, before the guards pulled her out. When the doors closed, Cynthia's parents sat frozen, their social empire crumbling. Her father looked at Daniel's father. "We'll repay everything. All 50 million. I give you my word." 30 days, Daniel's father said coldly. "Not 31. 30. They left with their heads down. In the quiet room, Daniel turned to Grace. His parents stood as well. Daniel pulled out his phone, putting it on speaker. "Lagos General Hospital, ICU ward. Yes, this is Daniel Okoye. I'm calling about patient Neko Obi. She's currently in your ICU awaiting kidney transplant." Typing sounds. "Yes, sir. That patient is scheduled to be moved out tonight due to non-payment. That will not be happening. The Okoye Foundation will cover all medical expenses. The transplant, surgery, recovery, all medication. Everything. Send the bills directly to me." Grace's legs gave out. Uche caught her before she hit the floor. "And one more thing," Daniel continued. "Contact the best kidney specialist in Nigeria. Spare no expense. That little girl gets the best care available." He ended the call and looked at Grace, who was crying, but not from pain anymore. "Grace, you have an accounting degree." She nodded, unable to speak. "After your sister recovers, I'd like to offer you a position. Not as a maid. As a junior financial manager. If you'll accept." Grace's voice broke. "Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you." Daniel's mother stepped forward, taking Grace's hands. "My dear child, I'm so sorry. No one should endure what you endured. And you handled it with such grace." She smiled softly. "Your name suits you." 6 months passed like a dream Grace kept expecting to wake from. Neko's surgery was successful. She was healthy, back in their village, thriving. The transplant had saved her life. Cynthia faced fraud charges. Her social media empire collapsed overnight. 2 million followers watched in real time as her carefully constructed image shattered. The comments that once praised her now condemned her. Her sponsorships evaporated. Her parents paid back the 50 million to avoid criminal prosecution, but their political career was destroyed. Cynthia was last seen working in a small boutique in Abuja, unrecognizable without her designer clothes and Instagram filters. Grace lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Suralere now. Not the Lekki mansion, but it was hers. Clean. Safe. Peaceful. Daniel hadn't just given her a job, he'd given her a future. She worked as a junior manager at the Okoye Foundation, finding others who'd fallen through society's cracks. Finding other Graces. Each morning, she sat on her small balcony with coffee, feeling Lagos sunlight on her face, and new peace. Real peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of dignity. She wasn't rich. But she was whole. She understood now that her silence hadn't been weakness, it had been strength. That truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds the light. That God's delays are not denials, and her helper had been positioned before she even knew to pray. The same people who watched her suffer watched her rise. But when she rose with grace. She never became what had hurt her. If you're going through your own suffering right now, don't give up. Your testimony is being written. Your helper is already in position. Keep your integrity. Keep your faith. Your day is coming. And when it comes, rise with grace.